What is James Cameron thinking?
Yeah.
What's up, guys, and welcome to None of This Really Matters, where the question of being a vegan or a vegetarian really doesn't matter here. I'm Ryan.
I'm Steven.
And today we're going to talk about what could have been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Canceled movies, adaptations into TV shows. How does it make you feel to think that James Cameron could have done a Spider-Man movie?
My childhood would have been way different.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's break it down for you. Each movie, what could have been better, what could have worked, and what could have been an absolute disaster. Coming up.
Alright, so what's first on our list?
So we have a lot to talk about, but I think we talk about the most recent one, which is the Inhumans. Ever heard of that before?
I was never exposed to that comic, no.
Right, which is, I think, kind of the point. The whole reason why they did the Inhumans to begin with as a movie was they tried to bring in a lot more space things into everything. Inhumans are a family who lived on Earth that were experimented on from the Kree and Skrull War that gave them powers of a Kree being to be powerful in many different ways. It's almost like trying to get into the X-Men, which they don't have the rights to, not yet at least. And now it's a TV show, and really the question is, do you really think Marvel belongs on TV compared to the movies that they have?
From what I've heard, Kevin Feige really doesn't get along with the head of the TV Marvel department. It was originally going to be a feature film, and Feige's like, hey, you can have our trash. This movie isn't going to fit with our vision.
And I think that from day one, it was going to be a disaster. It had Vin Diesel, who was going to be the lead character. I'm not a fan of Vin Diesel. I think he was really good in Guardians of the Galaxy. I am Groot. That's all he really needs to say. It is funny though, because Vin Diesel was supposed to play Black Bolt, and Black Bolt actually can't speak. If he does speak, then he would blow up mountains. That's pretty much what his power is. Really weird. The TV show is not getting really good reviews. There's many others. I mean, back in 2000, there was, Fantastic Four.
It would have been from Peyton Reed. This is the guy who took over Ant-Man after Edgar Wright kind of got the shaft. We're all really curious what Edgar Wright's Ant-Man would have been like, but we should also be curious as to what Peyton Reed's Fantastic Four could have been versus Tim Story, who made that really crappy one in, what was it, 2005?
I heard that Peyton Reed had like a whole different other vision for Fantastic Four.
Yeah. What's interesting is it would have been a lot like The Incredibles. It would have been set in the 60s. They would have had celebrity status, kind of like The Incredibles or even like Iron Man.
How everybody knows who they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this really could have been cool. He compared it a lot to what Joss Whedon did with the Avengers, just a really large scope. He ended up parting with the studio because they didn't like the idea of a period piece, and on top of that, they really thought that the Fantastic Four were kind of B-grade characters, and so they didn't want to give them the same scope that he envisioned.
And that's crazy to me, because Fantastic Four is like super huge in like Marvel comic books in general, and it's sad to see that like in 2005 Tim Story's version didn't really pay off.
Yeah.
I think this could have been way cool. I would have totally loved a period piece, and it's funny that Marvel didn't like that because Captain Marvel is actually supposed to be in the 90s.
Yes.
So I mean, I think that's going to be awesome. So period pieces for superheroes, I'm all for it. I think that could have been really cool.
Do you remember who would have played the characters?
Yeah, so Charlize Theron would have been the Invisible Woman instead of Jessica Alba. John C. Reilly would have been the Thing, which I think would have been hilarious.
Yes.
We all loved John C. Reilly. Human Torch was actually supposed to be played by Paul Walker. I think he would have been great. And Alex Denethor was going to be Mr. Fantastic. Everybody knows him as Wesley from Angel. I'm a huge Angel fan. He would have been really great. There's a lot more that we could talk about. Quentin Tarantino actually is supposed to do Iron Man, right?
Yeah, and Iron Fist.
And Iron Fist, which we all know is a TV series on Netflix. I think Quentin Tarantino, I think he would have done a pretty decent job with Iron Man. It would have been really violent, but Tom Cruise was actually actually supposed to be Tony Stark, which is really freaking weird to me. I don't think that would have worked at all. To have Quentin Tarantino direct Tom Cruise to this very violent character who wasn't really well known until 2008, I think it could have been a disaster.
Personally, I don't connect too much with Quentin Tarantino. I do really appreciate his love for B movies, and also he's interested in like blaxploitation, which would have really worked for Iron Fist. But I think his visual style would have been great for the comic books. But if he would have taken on Iron Man, I doubt we would have an MCU right now.
That's true, because Robert Downey Jr.'s version of Iron Man is so classic. They took a character that nobody really knew about. He wasn't very popular in the comic book. He was just like a B character, which is hard to believe because he's so huge now. And to think that somebody like, and this was rumored, Nicolas Cage was also in the mix too. That would have been freaking weird. So back in 1996, Marvel actually had plans to make a Black Panther movie. Recently, we got the Black Panther movie, and it was a great movie, but back in 1996, I don't know if it would have been the movie that we know it as today.
Would have been crazy. Wesley Snipes was supposed to play Black Panther, right?
Which I think would have been super cool. Wesley Snipes, we know him from Blade. I mean, that's definitely one of his most popular roles, which is actually another Marvel movie. And the funny thing is that he was pushing really, really hard to be the Black Panther and have everything work out. But Marvel was actually going bankrupt at the time. It's kind of hard to believe because they're so huge today. But like, for them to go bankrupt, they had to sell the rights, and then they pushed Blade on him. And then they came back to him in 2000 or somewhere around 98, and they said, "Are you interested in doing this?" And he said, "Nah, I think I'm going to do Blade 3, which we all know really sucked.
So to me, one of the most interesting movies that never happened is James Cameron's Spider-Man. And what's interesting is he would have brought in a lot of people that he worked with. For example, Spider-Man probably would have been Edward Furlong, who played Little John Connor in T2.
Oh, yeah.
Terminator 2. Leonardo DiCaprio was in the mix, but he ended up passing on Spider-Man later when it was directed by Sam Raimi, and he passed on being Robin in Batman and Robin.
Wow, so Leo...
He's pretty good at making the right call.
Leo turning down all the superhero roles, which I think is a good call.
Aunt May would have been played by Professor McGonagall, Maggie Smith.
Oh.
So that would have been pretty epic.
She's too old.
But this was the early 90s, and so she still might have not quite as old. And did you hear who was going to play the villains?
Yeah, Sandman and Electro, as well as Doc Ock, who actually was really rumored to play by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. I mean, could you see him climbing around with all of those mechanical arms?
I think it would have been campy, but I don't know. I think it would have been totally fun.
I heard this movie was also supposed to have an R rating, too.
Yeah, so I read most of the treatment/script, and there were lots of like F-bombs in there. There was a sex scene between Mary Jane and Peter Parker on top of the Brooklyn Bridge.
What?
And it's actually a pretty awkward scene because before that, Peter Parker's a virgin, and he has like this really awkward scientific foreplay where he's explaining to her how spiders have sex.
What is James Cameron thinking?
What's interesting reading this treatment is there are some gems in it that were pulled over to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So we have a lot of the same scenes with like Uncle Ben dying, pretty similar aesthetic in the storyboard, and also the iconic where like half of his costume gets blown off, and they use that in like 2 and 3 because they love it so much. We also get that in his original treatment, which I think is pretty visually epic.
I feel like James Cameron could have really done a good job, but it wouldn't be the Spider-Man that we know him today. I mean, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was, I thought, really good, and it paved the way for all of these great superhero movies that we have nowadays. I mean, there was Blade, there was the really old Captain America way back in the day.
Punisher,
yeah. 2 of them actually, and like those were just like kind of throwaways. I mean, Blade was actually really, really good, but the demographic was very, very different than what Spider-Man is, and Spider-Man spoke to so many people of different age groups, and I think Sam Raimi's version was the one that ushered in what we have today.
I agree.
So Marvel really was struggling back in the day. Again, it blows my mind how this juggernaut of a company struggled back in the day. I mean, a comic book company who tested the waters in film, everybody kind of like laughed at, and nobody really took any of their movies serious, and here we are ever since 2008 with Iron Man. It's just been a force to be reckoned with. It's really cool to see what what could have been, and we're really excited to see what will come to pass. I mean, how excited are you for Infinity Wars?
I think it's going to be epic. There are lots of things they're going to juggle, and I'm really curious to see how they do it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out the rest of our stuff here. Again, this is our countdown to the Infinity Wars. Comment down below. Tell us what you guys think would have been really good. I mean, would Tom Cruise have been really good as an Iron Man? I mean, what about Nick Cage actually being considered? That's ridiculous to me. What do you think? What are some other movies that you know of that were canceled? We don't do a lot of research here, him more than me, but check out all of our other videos that talk about it, as well as stay tuned for so much more Nerdy Blur TV content. Until next time. Alright, so I mess up a lot. What's up, guys, and welcome to None of This Really Matters, where the question of being a vegan, or what's the other one? We don't have the biggest green screen in the world. If you go like this, your hands...
Small gestures,
Small gestures in this vicinity. Vegan. What do they call people who eat normal? So, I mean, I don't know what that meant.
That's a good point.
We'll just see what happens. We'll see what comes out of the mouth. I mean, crazy stuff to see, right?
Yeah. What do I say?
What did you say? What did he say? I don't know what I'm saying.